Hello everyone and welcome to Cinderfall Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope everyone is staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all getting some time to fight that war against the Grey. Today we've got a wish listing video, this time about Fyreslayers. We're coming near the end of this series and it's been a great bit of fun to put together all these videos and people seem to be liking them a lot, so awesome. I'm glad you guys are enjoying them as much as I am. So a little bit about this video. This is just a wish listing video. There's nothing more than 10 things I'd like to see for Fyreslayers in the future, but I'd also like to know what you would like to see, and if there is anything you'd like to see, please leave some ideas and your thoughts down in the comments below. Also, if there's a faction that we haven't done yet but you'd like to see that faction done before any of the others, please leave that in the comments below as well. However, many of the factions at this point have been done, so please go check out the playlist with all of this on the channel. But anyway, enough rambling, let's get cracking into this. This is 10 things I'd like to see for Fyreslayers. Number 1, I'd like to see some Demi-Droff cavalry. So what I mean by that is smaller Dracoth sort of cavalry, like pretty much like the size of the Dracofs for the Stormcast Eternals, but for Fyreslayers and more Magmadroth looking creatures. I think Fyreslayers' general weakness is that they are slow, and that's not a bad thing. Every army should have their Achilles heel, and Fyreslayers certainly is their speed. I mean, they don't move and they hit like trucks, but speed is their issue. They have a couple of ways around this currently, obviously with the ability to sort of mine up with the Rune Smiter. I'm pretty sure is the correct character. If it's not, please correct me in the comments, but you know what I'm talking about. I think we don't want to sort of cover the base too much with these Demi-Droffs, so maybe just a cavalry that's maybe 8 to 10 inch movement, nothing fantastical, but definitely a little bit faster than your average Fyreslayer. I think if we also make them more elite, so you know, take them in units of 2, 4, 3 or something like that, and make them quite expensive, good but expensive, then people are paying the points to get this little bit of extra maneuverability, and it's not coming at a sort of and covering the whole of the army, because you won't be able to take an army of these without severely dropping your numbers on the table. Point number 2, and continuing on sort of on the Demi-Droff and maybe Magmadroths as well, I'd like to see other characters be able to be mounted. So especially if we've got these Demi-Droffs around, I'd like to see things like Battlesmiths and Doomseekers available to ride Demi-Droffs, or whatever we're going to call them. And perhaps maybe some of these characters going up onto the Magmadroths. I do understand that the Magmadroths also only sort of bend to the most fiercest and worthy Fyreslayers, but maybe there's some that can get there, but maybe not. And so that's where I think the Demi-Droffs sort of come in a little bit more. However, I could imagine like a Doomseeker on a Magmadroth. Imagine this Doomseeker has beaten this Magmadroth, and now the Magmadroth is following him. The Doomseeker thought he was going to meet his end at the hands of this Magmadroth, and instead he beat it, and now they wander the realms together on this doom-seeking oath, bonded by something greater. Point number 3, and continuing on sort of the Magmadroth and Demi-Droff idea, I'd like something bigger. Fyreslayers really lack a big centerpiece. They have the Magmadroth currently, but it's not really a centerpiece model the size of, I guess, current centerpieces for a lot of armies. I think something bigger, maybe a Fire Drake. I know I say dragons a lot in these videos, but dragons do fix a lot of problems. Maybe like a giant Magmadroth with like wings and like fire coming out its tail, and I almost imagine, and like this is super nerdy, but I almost imagine like some Magmadroth cross Charizard sort of thing. And yes, I know Charizard is not a dragon, but that's what I sort of imagine in my head of this thing looking like, and a Runefather sitting atop its shoulders. It screams awesome to me in my head, and I would really like to see it come true. Number 4, and we're continuing on the new models, and the reason why we've got so many models is because I really do feel that's a criticism thrown at Fyreslayers a lot, and it's got a little bit of purchase really. They are for somewhat samey, and I don't begrudge anyone for liking the Fyreslayers. The models are amazing. I've got to start collecting Fyreslayers over there that I've got to get painted up, but the Fyreslayers can be a bit samey with all their models and their units, which is fine, but I think some extra pieces would go a long way to helping break up the sameness. So for that, my last piece I'm going to add is, of unit wise anyway, is Fire Elementals. I know we've got one sort of in the endless spells, or the totally not endless spells for the Fire Slayers, but I think these sort of things would potentially run around the priests and have like these fire rock molten golems potentially would what they look like. And be like a cool addition in like some sort of heavy monstrous sort of elite infantry. And so the last sort of thing I want to add as a new model wise to the army anyway is thinking, well, maybe they need like a somewhat arranged option. Like, I know they've got the fire pikes currently, but maybe they need just a little bit more, something to give them a ranged threat, not necessarily like covering the whole of like very little range in the Fire Slayer army, but maybe it's time to bring back the old dwarven fire cannon. It sort of just fits the Fire Slayer aesthetic, and this giant magma throwing cannon I can imagine being quite a cool piece within the Fire Slayer army. Fire Slayers aren't like normal Slayers. They do know when to retreat and stuff like that. They're not the crazy berserkers that old world Slayers were. And so I think ranged options wouldn't be amiss for them, really. Point number 6. Now, we've heard bits about the Fire Slayers fighting for chaos and all that sort of stuff, and how they'll sell their services and do anything for Urgold. So I really want to dive into that whole glimmer lust that they have, where they can't help but go for the gold. I think it's an interesting sort of mechanic, and it would be really cool to sort of delve really heavily into that and see what we can unearth about the Fire Slayers. This is going to sort of lead into the next 2 points I want to make as well, and one of them is that I want to see them made a true gold faction, and maybe not true, but some sort of twists on it. For those who don't know what a gold faction is, it's a term from Magic the Gathering where you had cards that were gold. These cards were 2 different colours of the general game at once, and thus were a gold card. And that's where the idea comes from, that they can be put into any deck. I would like to see like maybe particular sub-factions that are used to selling their services to Chaos or stuff, given the ability to ally with Chaos factions or have allies brought in from these Chaos factions, etc. But I think that would just be a cool sort of dynamic to look at. This, of course, pushing into my point 8, is bound to create some sort of internal conflict amongst the Fire Slayers. There are Fire Slayers who don't view their sort of dealings with Chaos as good, or some that just outright don't deal with Chaos, and many that see dealings with Order as bad as well, and would much rather side with other factions in the game. I think the internal conflict of Fire Slayers is really, really interesting, and can be used a lot to sort of push the narrative of this army, and that it's very disharmonious at its core, because all of them have sort of different ideals and different thoughts about how far are they willing to go to get this Urgold. Point number 9 I want to make is not necessarily a new model, but I'd like to see unmounted Magmadross in the army. Unmounted Magmadross were sort of wanted and sort of rumoured a lot when the last Fire Slayers battle tome was coming out. However, I did notice upon building a Fire Slayers Magmadross myself, while those rumours were floating around, that the current Magmadross kit has a giant 50-cent piece hole in its back of where the throne sits. We would of course need a new kit to make Magmadross able to be unmounted. This in itself isn't a problem. A new cool Magmadross kit would be awesome, and you could make this maybe, as we were alluding to before, with different character options available on top of it. So you have an unmounted or these other lesser characters on top. It would be a cool way to do it. Last point though, and point 10, is I believe the Fire Slayers in-game need a true figurehead. I say this about a lot of factions, and it's something that I think is needed across Age of Sigmar. In Warhammer Fantasy we had these fantastic characters, and maybe a few too many of them in Warhammer Fantasy for that size of the world, but in Age of Sigmar we've got such an expansive world that we can have multiple different characters in the game without sort of streamlining and making your personal narrative needed to be bending to all these characters. I think Fire Slayers do need a figurehead, a model on the table that they can look up to. I mean, we have Gotrek currently, but he himself tells you he's not a Fire Slayer. And we have obviously the Shadespire Warband dude, but I'm thinking maybe a special character on Magmadroth or something like that, or even the Fire Drake that we've discussed, a special character to lead the Fire Slayers and give them a true direction in Age of Sigmar. We could potentially even have, with Fire Slayers, multiple different figureheads. Maybe one that is a bit more loose on his alignment, and maybe someone who is very strict of like, no, we're Order now and we're trying to prove ourselves to Sigmar. I do think there's a few different options to go down with this, but definitely something worth looking into, and something I look forward to seeing more from for Fire Slayers is some grand direction for them as an army. Anyway, that's enough from me today. That's 10 things I'd like to see for Fire Slayers, and once again, I'd like to know what you would like to see for Fire Slayers in the future. Leave some comments down below of what you would like to see and what you thought of my own opinions on Fire Slayers. If there's a faction we haven't done yet and you'd like to see that faction, also leave some comments down below with that faction. But we more than likely have done your faction. There's a lot we've done now, so go check out the playlist for these videos. But that's enough from me for today. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're getting so close to 1,000 subscribers now. It's fantastic. Thank you everyone for your support. I'll see you all again real soon. Stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the Grey.